to continue to have access to hard dollars, continue to have access to the capital that is funding groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad.
Do you support infanticide, killing a child after he's born?
I do not agree with the basis of that question,
What's
but
the
I
basis?
do believe that abortion is health care.
Okay, so I'll take that as a yes, you do agree with infanticide.
What I think is, based on your question, you have a very low opinion of pregnant people. Because if you think
No,
that anybody would carry...
answer the question.
Excuse me.
Answer the question.
I'm answering it. Do you
No,
want
you're not.
You want
I
to
will
answer,
take it
or
that
you
you
want to keep
agree.
talking over witnesses?
I take it with all those words, you do agree with basically murdering a child after they're born. Miss Graves, could you answer that? Would you just, yes or no?
I have to say, Congressman, how you just characterize the representative statement is extremely inflammatory and the type of thing that it's dangerous.
The priorities of this administration are to make America weak. The priorities of this administration is to promote, instead of our military to keep us safe, to promote priorities such as transgender surgeries, climate dollars that go to their friends and their allies on their side of the aisle. Invasion at the border. We've got out-of-control crime. We have out-of-control gas prices, from eggs to construction lumber to everything else in this country. No reductions at all.
You talk about dangerous. Alabama has a murder rate 3 times New York City. Texas is 50% higher. An unstable world? Well, unstable because a Republican minority has refused to be able to support our valiant allies in Ukraine that are fighting for our freedom and their lives. And it's still hung up. I find that appalling and embarrassing. And you should too. Dreaming up non-existing facts, denying reality, and catering to the most extreme members of your congressional folks isn't helping us. It's dividing us, it's making us weaker, and it doesn't have to be that way.
This administration has no desire to end the immigration. They want it for 2 things: power, and change the censuses of the states that transport them all over this country. It's an abomination, and the support by a meaningful new president who will stop the border and will close it down.
I kind of feel like I'm in an episode of The Twilight Zone. I can't figure these guys out. Bottom line is that I hear they want to be tough on the border, and every time we've tried to be tough on border security, pass a tough border security bill, they say no. And what we have here is a non-binding resolution that does nothing, doesn't even go to the Senate, can never become law. It is nothing. It is just a press release. And what they turned down was $440 million for more judges to accelerate the asylum claim. So we're not waiting years. We can do this in weeks and months. $23 million to destruct Mexican cartels. They said no to that. $6.7 billion for customs and border protection. Said no to that. 50,000 ICE detention beds. They said no to that. $4 billion for USCIS. Said no to that. And why? Because the former President of the United States called up and said, I want the issue. The former President of the United States, by the way, who says that immigrants poison the blood of our country. The former President of the United States, and I'd like to insert this article in the record, Mr. Speaker, as unanimous consent. This is from Salon, and quote, the title is, he said Hitler did some good things. Ex-Chief of Staff says Trump praised Hitler in White House. Let that sink in. I reserve my time.
We are totally different. And some of the things that, as you said in rules yesterday, Mr. McGovern, the last 4 years under the Biden, Zara Harris administration have wrecked this country. You mentioned yesterday, and I brought this up in rules, empathy for children. Where's the empathy for the 300,000 that this administration is letting in this country unaccompanied? God knows what's happening to them, of the 15 million that are coming in here. How is that working for America? How is it working for America when you're taking the side of the criminal and putting handcuffs on the policemen, on your defund police activity? How is your actions of this administration on tax cuts, tax? You want the federal government to tell these people where to spend their money. We're not having it. The reason the amendments aren't made in order, they're dumb. Some of them are good, but most of them are dumb, and they're anti-freedom.
Again, I'll reiterate what the gentleman from South Carolina just said. We have different viewpoints and different values. I'm sorry that he feels he lives in a wrecked country. I don't believe that. I think the United States of America is the greatest country on this planet. And I'm proud to serve in Congress to try to help the people of this country. I would never refer to this country as a wrecked country. And again, the gentleman who just spoke, I thought when he was appointed to the Rules Committee, he was appointed to make sure that we had a more open process. And I regret to inform the gentleman that 106 closed rules slipped by him this Congress. I appreciate him standing in the breach. And by the way, when he refers to all the amendments that were rejected as being dumb, 50% of them were of Republican amendments. Yeah, were denied. I think 27 of your amendments were denied. I wouldn't classify them as dumb, even though I may disagree with the intent.
Do you know Congressman Corey Mills?
I do know Mr. Mills. And would you like me to answer some of the questions?
Let me
and some
just
of the
ask
points?
you. You know,
in fact, I served with Mr. Mills in Iraq.
do you realize who did he tell a number of people when he rescued the stranded Afghanistans as best he could, and then other countries? Who did he say was his biggest threat from this administration when he was flying over there?
Well, I'm going to take this as a rhetorical question. So if you want to tell me, that's fine. You can tell me.
No, what's your opinion?
If you'd actually allow me to answer the numerous misrepresentations, I'd be happy to do so.
Look, I'm not going to let you filibuster here because we've got other
Well, I'm not
things
trying
to
to
go.
filibuster.
All I'm saying is, ask him, Corey Mills, who went on the missions himself. The biggest threat, one of the biggest threats he faced was from this Biden administration shooting his plane down. He will tell you that today. And that is unbelievable coming from a patriot like Corey Mills is. Congressman Crow, you can put in I would like for you to give me the date and time that Donald Trump agreed to the withdrawal as Biden directed, because I don't think it's there.
Can I?
Very quickly. I'm not going to filibuster. You can dispute
I'm not looking
everything.
to filibuster. My name has been invoked several times, and I feel compelled. In fact, I think this committee has an obligation to allow me to respond to the things that have been said.
Up to a point. Mm-hmm. Just
Can I have some time to respond?
No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
They say this was a success. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Mr. Crow, we heard several statements that didn't seem to comport with what happened on the ground. It seems to me like Trump negotiated a pretty bad agreement, and then they want to forget about that. And the idea that Trump left it all stable. Why don't you respond to some of the issues that you just heard?
Well, thank you, Ms. Ledger-Fernandez. First of all, I mean, this proceeding is another example. They literally don't want to talk about the issue, and they don't want to hear from people who have facts that would run contrary, right? They cherry-picked facts from their purported investigation. They make claims in this hearing and then don't allow me to respond to them. They are doing it through the Rules Committee instead of having a hearing that we could hold tomorrow, because we actually have a scheduled hearing tomorrow, and we could have this debate. So they just don't want the truth, and that's pretty clear.
My amendment is pretty simple. It prohibits funding for the purchase of electric vehicles. We have a member here in Congress who owns a dealership who is burying his electric vehicle, which doesn't work, as a testament to how useless these vehicles are. DHS is proud to become the first federal agency to debut the electric vehicles for law enforcement. How does an electric vehicle help a law enforcement officer do his or her job better? How does an electric vehicle protect our nation? DHS's website says it is implementing a new approach to meet climate crisis, whatever that is, which includes reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Mr. Speaker, this is a joke.
First, we should all support sensible steps to reduce the government's greenhouse gas emissions. Electric vehicles have the potential to significantly improve federal fleet efficiency and reduce vehicle operation and maintenance costs. Prohibiting the department from buying one type of cutting-edge technology just because some of my colleagues want to score political points and continue to deny the existence of climate change is shameful and impractical. Transitioning our federal fleet to electric vehicles where possible is not part of some woke agenda. It's a matter of practicality, risk mitigation, efficiency, and safety. I support these efforts, and I believe the American people support the cost savings, cleaner air, new jobs, and healthy environmental future that will come with working to achieve our climate goals. This amendment is just another partisan policy rider that gets us no closer to a final enacted bill for the department before the close of the fiscal year.
My amendment prohibits the provision of gender transition procedures, including surgery or medication, through the Exceptional Family Member Program. I think I've heard it all when my good friend on the other side mentioned that the medical profession was for the surgery. That's like saying the owners of a gas station or a petroleum company are for gasoline production.
Just on the comment about doctors being like gas station owners, of course a doctor is going to want to operate whenever you show up. That is not the way the medical profession works. I've been through a number of operations myself. I don't always agree with decisions that doctors make, but I will stand up for the medical profession and say they're not selling a product to the point where the more of it they sell, the happier they are. They're not just going to operate on anyone who walks in. It is the purpose of a medical doctor to make a medical determination about what the proper treatment is, not to sell as much of it as is humanly possible. So I stand by what I said earlier. Congress should not be telling doctors what medical decisions they should make.
Mr. Laurie, you mentioned national security threat. Is the invasion at the border a national security threat?
I'm talking about what's here in this bill in terms of defense funding and commenting on the letter. I don't know if you've received a copy of Secretary Austin's letter, where he outlines very, very clearly what the downside is if we, to the military and to our national security.
No, is our national security under attack by the invasion at the border, yes or no?
Well, I don't know. I don't understand what your question is in relation to you. Are you talking about?
You said this was a national security threat if we didn't pass.
CR.
Let me just, I'll let you finish. Look, can I just ask the question?
Sure, go ahead.
Go right ahead. I just caught the tail end of you saying this, not funding
the Defense Department.
Defense Department through, I guess you're wanting through the end of this year.
Yeah.
Was a national security threat. Is the invasion at the border a national security threat?
I don't understand what that has to do with the continuing
resolution.
Resolution. Yeah. What does it have to do with the continuing resolution? Your continuing resolution. This is a one corner, the Republican House majority. The Senate hasn't participated.
The national security threat has everything to do with the funding. The national security threat, that invasion at the border that your administration has saddled us with, is a threat to this whole system of government. And let me just tell you this.
Well, go ahead.
The fact that we are putting the SAVE Act with this to verify whether you're a citizen or not, I think has a lot to do with the integrity of this country and our voting system.
Well, I would just say to you that if you're very, very concerned about the border security issue, then you would have been able to pass the bipartisan bill that came out of the United States Senate.
That's not true. That's not true.
The Border Patrol.
You were 15. It was 15,000 per day. That was a farce just to get, and you know that.
I'm focused on this continuing resolution.
I get that.
And the lack of, where the Defense Department has told us that the shortfall and the inconsistency for them over the next 6 months have real problems in terms of our national security.
The inconsistency of particularly Lloyd Austin. He is a national security threat by what he's allowed to happen to this country. He hadn't spoken one word up on the invasion that's happened at the border. And for you to sit here and say this is a national security threat when you and your party have allowed 15 million in this country is a travesty.
I'll correct the gentleman. We don't have 15 million people here illegally. We probably have well over 20 million now because we have 10 million just in the last 3.5 years.
And I will tell you what came alive with me the past 2 weeks. You realize there are over 320,000 children, unaccompanied minors, that are into God knows what. Put it into football perspectives. Each football stadium holds around 85,000. That's 4 stadiums of children in this country, Mr. Lario, of your administration, letting in this country without a parent, without knowing the language, to fend for themselves. That is a travesty. I yield back.
If I might, you
yes,
asked,
yes, ma'am.
You
Well,
asked the question.
I've yielded back,
I'll
but-
ask the chair. Yeah, I apologize. Because there's one piece in this. This is on unmanned aircraft systems and the authority for that. Allowing the authorities, this is coming from, allowing authorities to lapse would weaken the nation's overall security posture, leaving critical infrastructure, public spaces more exposed to drone-related threats. Additionally, it would provide transnational criminal organizations with more opportunities to use drones to evade detection and carry out illegal activities across borders.
What's your point?
The point is that there are systems that are not going to be able to be utilized that could potentially address what you are talking about in terms
They
of
utilized the
illegal.
balloon from China. They utilized that, didn't they? The balloon
Sir,
from
I
China that
respond-
was utilized.
I was responding to your issue of dealing with the border. This is something that would deal with it, and it is
If you wanted to
eliminated.
deal with the border, you would have done it 4.5 years ago. You didn't do
Don't talk
it.
to me about dealing with
You
the
wanted
border.
to let the 15 million in but to keep power. It's not going to work this time.
You know, my friend, I have acknowledged a border crisis. We've had opportunities to deal with it. We had opportunities. I've been here for a while. I can remember when Senator McCain and others
Today.
came together.
Today.
They came together to put forward a immigration reform, and it was the House at the time, House Republicans, who rejected it in the same way that House Republicans have rejected it in this past year when former President Trump said to folks in the majority, don't do it, don't give Biden a win. If you're really serious about it, you would have taken on that bill.
If Biden wanted to win, he would have finished the wall and stopped
Thank
it.
you.
He's the one that opened it up, and you know it, and children are suffering.
All right.
Yes,
All right.
you made them
Let's
suffer
take a
when you
breath.
separated them from their families.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Roy.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of my amendment that prohibits funds for TSA's, quote, Inclusion Action Committee. In August of 2020, TSA announced the Inclusion Action Committee, which it describes as a coalition of diverse leaders focused on measuring the current state of diversity and inclusion at the TSA. The committee was instrumental in creating a gender-neutral option for the TSA PreCheck to serve non-binary and gender nonconforming passengers and allow applicants to select their gender based on the self-attestation, regardless of the sex assigned at birth. This is flat out insanity. Where else does this work in our society? Can I go to a bank and say I'm Bill Gates and I need a $10 million loan? Can I go to any NFL team and say I'm a star football player and get automatically on the team? It's insanity. How does letting a confused man check a box, calling himself a woman, make our country any safer? Is this really what we should be focusing on? The committee also came out with a report of best practices to support an inclusion, diverse environment. Where's the report of the best practices to secure our border, which has been open for the last 3.5 years? The Department of Homeland Security has utilized over 50 airports to process more than 400,000 inadmissible aliens through this administration's unlawful Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuela mass patrol programs, as well as any other country. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
I claim time in opposition.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is probably no agency in the department that interacts with everyday Americans, our constituents, more than the Transportation Security Administration. TSA's interaction with the traveling public is one that should reinforce TSA's commitment to the safety and security of the traveler and their experience with TSA. That is not just limited to screening baggage. It means respecting all travelers, including travelers from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds and the LGBTQIA+ community. TSA's recognition of inclusivity should be celebrated, not handicapped. Whether this majority wants to accept it or not, we are a diverse nation. That's what makes us great. This amendment is simply another pointless culture war and waste of our time. I oppose the amendment and I urge my colleagues to vote no, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would just say this is insanity. For those listening in the balcony, I'm sure if they flew here, they had to present a valid ID and a valid verification, a valid ticket before they got on the airplane. Now with illegals, no photo ID, no verification or information, just a piece of paper provided by the illegal immigrant. This is a blatant mockery of the United States law. Instead of securing our transportation system, TSA is more worried about diversity and feelings. And as a side note, can I go up to the TSA agent and claim to be a pilot and get into pilot seat? No, I can't. It's insanity to even say that.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from South Carolina. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
The Exceptional Family Member Program provides resources to military families with special needs. This program is designed for military spouses, children, or other dependent family members who require ongoing medical or educational services, such as individuals with asthma, autism, chronic respiratory illness, intellectual disabilities, and much more. The military has tried to politicize this valuable program in order to get transgender procedures passed. For example, the Air Force suggested using the Exceptional Family Member Program for families who want to help their child transition. I would just say you're taking, and I'll list some other things that are included in this that already exist that they're paying for, and to take money away from the things I will mention, I think is unheard of.
I think we can all agree we want our military dependents to be safe and healthy. In fact, that is a crucial part of our national security. If our service members are worried about their families, they're not going to be focused on the mission that we need them to do. That's why military dependents should have access to gender-affirming care, which is safe, essential, medically necessary care that promotes the health and well-being of transgender people. Now, I highly doubt my colleagues who support this amendment know someone who's personally received gender-affirming care, let alone talk to them about their experience, about what it was like with the doctor, about how hard or easy it was to receive that care. I have. Earlier this year, my transgender brother had gender-affirming care surgery. He'll tell you it's been life-changing, and it improved his relationship with his body, his life, and his society. He'll also tell you it wasn't easy to get it. That confidence and happiness that my brother has, that's what I want for everyone, especially those in the LGBTQ+ community who are too often misunderstood, judged, discriminated against, and then have to hear the hateful things coming from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. But denying service members the ability to provide medically necessary care for their children, this amendment will lead service members to leave the military, will weaken efforts to recruit other people with trans family members to join the military. We've already seen this happen, where service members have had to dramatically alter their career or leave the service altogether in order to support their trans dependents. The bottom line is this: the federal government should not get in the middle of medical decisions, period. This amendment would be unconstitutional and would likely lead to costly litigation. We've already seen similar laws struck down in the courts for violating the Equal Protection Clause by denying transgender adolescents the same care that is provided to cisgender adolescents. And because the bans would violate the fundamental due process rights of parents to provide best practice medical care for their children. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment.
Gentleman from Washington reserves. Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
I just add to some of the comments made about the medical doctors. The medical doctors are making money on this. Gas stations make money. The free enterprise system does that. And for them to be in favor of it, they're doing the surgery. They're getting paid for it. The military is meant to defend this country, and it's gotten away from that. And that's what the American people are so sick of. Do you want to do away with life-threatening conditions or chronic conditions for transgender surgery? Do you want to take away asthma, respiratory-related diagnosis for transgender surgery? Do you want to do intellectual or development delays, the dollars for that, for transgender surgery? Attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, you want to take that away? Chronic conditions that require adaptive equipment, assistive technology, or environmentally or architectural considerations. That's everything that's included, and what you want to do is take money for somebody that doesn't know whether they're a man or a woman. It doesn't make sense then, and it doesn't make sense now. And I'm offended that you want to take dollars away from that cancer patient. If you're telling me the cancer patient goes behind somebody that doesn't know whether they're a man or woman, you and I just have a basic worldview difference. The price tag for individual gender-affirming surgical procedures and other medical treatments can range from $8,000 to $100,000. And you want to take that from somebody that has a disability? I'm offended that you're doing that.
So I just want to follow that last train of logic. So basically, if a trans person receives medical care, it is by definition taking medical care away from somebody else. So I guess if a cancer patient is receiving medical care, that's taking it away from somebody else. That's simply not true. That is not the choice here. If you need health care, you should get health care. Now, there will be a robust debate within the medical community about what is appropriate, certainly. But to deny trans people, in this case, we're talking about children of people who are serving in the military being denied health care that they need. I don't feel that we should be denying health care from children whose medical professionals say they need, and it is not a choice of taking it away from somebody else. It's not the way our healthcare system works. What this amendment would do is clearly take health care away from families and spouses of service members that a medical doctor has determined that they need. But I want to come back to this argument that somehow our military is being destroyed by wokeness. This is completely and totally untrue. Number one, as we stand here today on the floor, we have the best military in the world. They are serving ably all across the world. It is incredibly talented, incredibly effective. And I am offended that the other side of the aisle seems to want to continue to denigrate our military because of a right-wing agenda to wage a culture war. That's not what is going on in the United States military. Recruitment is a problem primarily because of how good the economy is, and again, because for a period of time they weren't able to recruit because of COVID. And also, in a little bit apart, because the right wing is bashing on the military 24/7. Now, are there some people in the military who long for the days when gay people and trans people and women and even people of color weren't in a position to compete with them? I am quite certain that there are. I'm also quite certain that it's a relatively small number. All we are trying to do, I yield myself an additional 30 seconds, is make sure that we have equal access to the military.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Really? Then I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an incredibly important issue in the bill this year. We have several amendments that go after diversity, equity, and inclusion in the military, and it could not be more misguided. We need a diverse military. We need to recruit from all across the country, regardless of race, creed, color, religion, gender. We need to make sure that we're taking advantage of the talent of all in America. And sadly, we haven't really historically done that. We still have a major challenge. Just to give one example, when you look at the promotions within the military, the statistics have come out, and this is from 2023, not 20 years ago. Every single ethnicity, gender, is promoted at a lower rate than white men. Now, is it the case that white men are just naturally better at this than anybody else? Absolutely not. So why? Why do we have this disproportionate level of promotion? I don't know for sure, okay? But I think it is worth it to have somebody at the Pentagon trying to answer that question. Because if you are a black person, if you are a woman, if you are a Hispanic person, if you are a gay or trans person, and you're looking at this and saying, should I sign up for the military? One central question you're going to have is, am I going to get a fair shot? And historically, all of those groups that I just mentioned have not gotten a fair shot. I challenge anybody on the floor to dispute that fundamental fact. So let's have at least some people at the Pentagon who are trying to make sure that they do, and we were able to recruit a diverse population and bring them in.
The military's sole purpose is to provide for the defense of our great nation. Our military's focus should be the protection of the American people and our freedoms, not liberals' feelings. Therefore, my amendment would eliminate any offices of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the armed forces and in the DOD. We should focus on diversity of ideas and opinions, not races and genders. DEI programs tend to be ineffective and cost the taxpayers more money, and it's been a very real detriment to our recruitment of our military. In short order, a woke military is a weak military. We shouldn't even be dealing with this, to be honest with you. The fact that money is going to fund this, you know, if you take a car to a mechanic, you don't go to politicians to find out what's wrong with your car. You go to the mechanic. I'm in the real estate business. We build houses. If I have a trouble with a house, I go to my carpenters. I would advise my friends from the other side of the aisle that last year, 160 retired flag officers wrote a letter to the Armed Services Committee, Chairman Rogers, about the dangers of DEI and their opposition to it in the military. 160, and I'm sure it would be far more than this, if you talk to the people that are serving, will point out why this is so detrimental.
I do talk to people in the military all the time, and our military is doing just fine. Now, there will always be people who are opposed to greater inclusion. We have seen this throughout the military in a wide variety of areas. Way back when, it was opposition to black people serving in the military. Then there was a lot of opposition to gay people serving in the military. And every single time, you had some people in the military saying, this is going to destroy us. Unit cohesion will fall apart. We can't possibly treat people fairly and function. And they've all been proven wrong every single time. The people I talk to in the military say things are going just fine, that they are, in fact, being more inclusive, and the military is as strong as it has ever been. It is completely wrong for a right-wing political agenda to denigrate our military to try to make the point that there's some kind of excessive wokeism going on. That is not what the overwhelming majority of people in the military are telling me and others. What they are saying is that inclusion does matter. People need to be treated fairly. And the idea that if the military goes like this and says, we don't see color, we don't see gender, we don't see any of this, that it'll all just go away and everything will be fine, is absurd. Reasonable diversity, equity, and inclusion works. That's what the military is doing. Please let them continue to do it.
I'll just add that I think if you took a real diverse group and got opinions on the military, if it were doing so well, why are they 30% down in recruitment? Why are people not coming into it? Less than a month after the appointment by President Biden, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, he directed commanding officers and supervisors at all levels to schedule a day to discuss extremism. What do you think our foreign adversaries are doing at this? They're laughing their heads off. I would just say that we need to support this amendment, get it out of the military. Let's focus on building ships, focus on building airplanes, let's focus on building missions, not DEI and extremism that my friends on the other aisle want to try to continue to highlight.
To respond to the issue of why recruitment is down, there's actually 3 reasons why recruitment is down. Number 1, the pandemic, when they were restricted in their ability to recruit for a year and a half. Number 2, because we have very low unemployment. Recruitment is always down when we have low unemployment. And number 3 is because the right wing has decided to demonize the military as some sort of woke place that no one should serve in. And yes, some people do listen to that message. And I've spoken to members and others who are pushing that message who say, it's probably, it's not really a problem. They say, well, it's out there. It's out there because you all are putting it out there and creating this level of division that doesn't need to be created. Recruitment can be just fine with diversity. In fact, it would be better.
I would just add that I don't know how long my friends from the other side of the aisle are going to keep mentioning the pandemic, COVID. It's over with, and the shortage is still existing. The fact that, again, we're funding this, having a day to discuss it, we ought to be having a day of how to fight and arming our brave men and women who are serving in the military. I urge adoption of this amendment.
Gentleman yields. Gentlelady from Virginia is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our strength of our military is the people. And the people bring with them the sum of their life experiences and perspectives and what they know. In my family, I had several uncles born between 1918 and 1938 who served during World War II in the Navy in a segregated unit where they were not allowed to fight. They were only allowed to cook because of the color of their skin. And the stories that they told their children about the indignity they suffered from their fellow service members and superior officers, do you think any of their children wanted to serve the military? There are countless stories like that. Because as we see people who did not live under Jim Crow dying off and those stories are not being told, people don't understand that a legacy of 300 years of slavery and Jim Crow did not go away with the wave of a magic wand. When people show up and see people from different backgrounds, different colors, different religions for the first time in the military, which does still happen, they bring their life experiences and what they know, and sometimes have trouble understanding and respecting the different life experiences of other people. And DEI programs are designed to help bridge that gap, to help increase recruitment by making the descendants of people who were discriminated against when they served in the military actually want to join. It makes sure that everyone who does join is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve as people who are putting their lives on the line for every American. This amendment should be defeated.
Congressman Crow, thank you for your service. This war in Afghanistan began in, I think, August of 2001.
October
of 2001. It ended with the withdrawal of August of 2021. Who ordered the evacuation?
Are you talking about the go to zero order? Are you talking about the Doha agreement? Or are you talking about
the withdrawal of the troops, the closing of the bases? What administration ordered that? Was it Donald Trump's or was it Joe Biden's?
Donald Trump is the president who entered into the Doha agreement in February of 2020. That agreement bound the United States to the Taliban to go to zero. So no U.S. service members, no contractors, all U.S. personnel out of the country within 14 months of the signing of that agreement.
Agreements can be modified by the current administration. Donald Trump tell me what date that he said he would follow the same, I guess, evacuation procedures that Biden did.
So
he said he wouldn't have. He would never have done it like this. He would have gotten the Americans out first.
In fact, indeed, in January of 2021, when President Biden came into office, during the transition, the Biden administration received zero information from the Trump administration on compliance with the agreement by the Taliban, where the interagency was on the review of the impact of a potential withdrawal. So all of that had to be reviewed. So the president ordered an interagency review starting in January in 2021. At the culmination of that interagency review, in April of 2021, President Biden decided to continue the withdrawal that was started by Donald Trump and substantially accomplished by Donald Trump. So when he came into office, It was the lowest number of troops since 2001 in Afghanistan because Donald Trump had started that withdrawal already.
But Donald Trump never made the statement he would do the withdrawal like Joe Biden did.
That
He never has said that.
Yeah, that is true because Donald Trump actually said he would do it faster and would have accomplished it in 2020. In fact, in 2020, fall of 2020,
he would have done
it.
Hold on, Congressman. He would have done it. He would have withdrawn every American there, and the troops would be the last one defending it. And it's really not. I mean, you bring him into this, it makes no difference. The 20-some years that we've been in this war, there was one evacuation. Americans died. They were left there. Who made the call to leave $7 billion worth of?
That's false, actually, that number, and I will get to that. Okay, I'll explain why that's false.
But
first of all,
let me ask you this: was there any supplies left? You can dispute the number, but was there any supplies left, and was there $54 million in currency left?
I would be happy to address that, but I'm going to first address your question about the withdrawal. In fact, it was Donald Trump who said unequivocally that he wanted to bring all the troops home by Christmas 2020.
He did not say.
And then his command. Let me finish, sir. And then his commander said, "No, that's not going to work. That would be a disaster." Right. So then they extended it, and then the Biden administration came in. And Joe Biden extended it even further because under the Doha Agreement, under the agreement that Donald Trump negotiated, all troops were going to have to be out by spring of 2020. But the military commander said that was not plausible and not good to do because we all know that in military terms, retrograde operations, that's the military term for withdrawal, are the riskiest, most complicated, and difficult things to do. So he listened to his commanders. They renegotiated with the Taliban to withdraw by August 2021, which is what they did.
He telegraphed what he was going to do, and he left American troops who died. That's the bottom line.
That is not true.
And he left, okay, well then I guess the resolution that Chairman McCall's doing is for people who lived. I mean, for you to make that kind of statement is amazing.
They negotiated
I'm reclaiming my time.
and extended.
I'm reclaiming my time. This administration was the administration that made the call to leave Americans there. This administration was the one that made the call to leave whatever amount of artillery, guns, SUVs in Afghanistan.
Sir, do you know where that $7 billion number comes from?
Okay, I'm going to finish I'm not going to tie this committee up. You can debate, it's been reported. I mean, you can have a different opinion. You can't have different facts.
I can tell you that number.
And so
Gentleman
the fact is,
from South Carolina controls the time.
the fact is that this administration bears responsibility for the deaths. Just like it's interesting you said the Taliban, you made some comment about them being at war with America. They would have gone to war with America. Where the 15 million that are coming across here illegally, are they vetted to make sure there's no Taliban or terrorists? No. So this administration has blood on its hands. And this administration, with its policies, bears responsibility. And this resolution is the least we can do. Now, you can try to go back through the years where rights and wrongs were done, but there was one beginning and one withdrawal. And it does a disservice to these dead Americans. This administration has been a boondoggle, not just in this. American lives are endangered, just like the invasion at the border, that all kind of rhetoric is trying to say that Trump calls that. He did not. It's just not true. Donald Trump is not true that he said he would do the exact evacuation that Joe Biden did. He said he'd get the Americans out first, and they would be protected. So it's amazing we're having to even debate this resolution.
Would you like me to address any of the questions or any of the issues you raised?
You know, it's just rhetoric. Not really, because...
Okay, well, I'd be happy to correct the record and explain to you the misrepresentations in this that you're going to vote for.
I'm not, it's no consequence.
A couple of things that I think are really important, and there's more than we have time to dispel. But a couple of things. I did not co-chair the investigation. I was the ranking member of the Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee on the Foreign Affairs Committee. This is the subcommittee that the majority established to conduct the bulk of the investigation, or their purported investigation into Afghanistan. And as the ranking member of that subcommittee, I never saw a draft report. In fact, I didn't see the report until it was publicly released. I had no say in their report, nor did they ever at any time engage with any of the minority staff or members in putting the report together. So that's just one illustration of many as to how this is a partisan hit job and not an effort to try to get to the truth. And that's the fact. And no, Afghanistan was not stable in January in 2021. Not only were there the lowest number of U.S. troops since 2001, but the Taliban had been advancing and taking territory since 2013. In fact, the U.S. military commander, General Scott Miller, in charge of all U.S. troops for the years leading up to 21 and during, testified that it was, quote, a slow bleed, end quote. We were losing. And Joe Biden had only two options left. Donald Trump gave him only two options because he didn't have enough troops on the ground. And all the military commanders said very clearly that if he had broken the Trump agreement with the Taliban, an agreement, by the way, that Donald Trump negotiated without the Afghan government, that gave no talk or no allocation for human rights or the rights of women, doesn't speak about that at all in the agreement, and actually says that the Afghan government had to release 5,000 Taliban prisoners. That's what Trump agreed to. That further destabilized the situation on the ground. That's what Joe Biden was facing. Either go back to war with the Taliban and surge troops in, however many, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000.
Let me just ask a question. So Trump negotiated agreement that called for the release of the Taliban prisoners.
Correct.
And when were they released?
They were released, they started to be released in 2020.
Right, so they were released under Trump.
Correct.
So Trump negotiated an agreement that releases all of these Taliban prisoners
Correct.
into society. Trump negotiates, from what you're telling me, Trump negotiates an agreement that brings down the troops to a slow bleed to very dangerous levels for the rest of the American troops. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's right.
Okay, so those are the facts of what was happening during Trump. It was not stable, is what you've now described.
Donald Trump's agreement agreed to the closure of bases, the reduction of troops and contractors, the release of Taliban prisoners, gave no accommodation whatsoever or requirement for human rights or the protection of women and girls, and completely excluded the Afghan government from those negotiations.
And does this resolution make reference to any of Trump's excellent negotiating skills in terms of, that sounds like a pretty lousy negotiating deal for America?
It simply references the agreement, but it talks about none of the components we just talked about.
So, and are there any other elements that you want to correct with regards to the exchange that has taken place?
Yeah, one other thing, one of your colleagues mentioned something about $7 billion of weapons and equipment that were left behind. That number actually is the entirety of U.S. military weapons and equipment given to the Afghan National Security and Defense Forces over the entire 20 years of the war, right? Much of it destroyed in combat, much of it beyond its useful life, much of it left unserviceable after contractors and servicing and maintenance were not provided for. That is the entirety. So to take that number and to say that what was left in the hands of the Taliban is just completely misleading.
So the statement about the $7 billion, that was given to the Afghanis, so it was no longer our equipment? Is that what I'm
That's right. In fact, General Milley and General Miller testified very clearly during the transcribed interviews that the United States military took all of its equipment with them.
Is there anything else that you want to correct in the record?
Well, there's more than I think we have time for this evening, but certainly that's a good start.
There's no clock in the Rules Committee.
You're sure? This is it. This is the last Democrat that gets to ask questions.
This notion that the withdrawal, by the way, a lot of the challenges of the withdrawal, many of them, occurred because President Ghani fled the country. After President Ghani fled the country, which nobody anticipated, by the way, nobody thought that was going to happen. And I've spent much of my adult life either serving in Afghanistan, focused on Afghanistan issues. Nobody saw that coming. And then that led to the precipitous collapse of the Afghan military and the police forces, which then led to a very challenging withdrawal environment in that month. But there's no evidence that shows that the situation on the ground and the challenges at the airport in August of 2021 were avoidable. And that or let me be clear, that the attack on Abbey Gate and the death of those 13 members was avoidable. In fact, the Department of Defense's own investigation showed very clearly that there was never a positive ID of the bomber, and nobody knew who that person was. And the majority's assertion that reliance on the Taliban to run checkpoints is somehow related to that ignores the reality that the Taliban and the ISIS are actually sworn mortal enemies and continue to try to kill each other to this day. And in fact, the reliance on Taliban checkpoints made our troops safer, because instead of having to guard the outer perimeter and maintain those checkpoints, we were able to be in an inner perimeter. So these are many, many things that are false or misleading in this resolution, and I would urge my colleagues to not support it.
Thank you. I think that anytime we have the loss of life, and especially in incidents like that, it's very sad and it's hard for the country. It is unfortunate when it gets used in such a partisan and politicized manner like this. With that, Mr. Chair, I will yield back.